Our gears are tied for the Chinese Navy until their support not available.
First platoon, on me! Second platoon, clear that pier!
We are talking Megalodon Rising, directed by Brian Norwag and stars Winter Eddins and Tom Sizemore. Now I say stars Tom Sizemore, he is the named actor here in 2 or 3 scenes which appear to be from maybe his office at home. This is actually a sequel to the 2018 movie simply called Megalodon, which of course was a mockbuster for the Jason Statham movie, The Meg. Now, what is the story of this one? So it focuses on this naval vessel whose commander is actually the sister of the main character from the original film. And they are kind of going about their business as naval vessels do. And they discover there's actually been a wreck of a Chinese ship which has been mysteriously kind of downed, and there's a single survivor, and yet we find there are other Chinese vessels that kind of want this kind of person back, obviously clearly on a spy mission. However, both the Americans and the Chinese are attacked by 3 deadly megalodons that are intent on harming them. What will happen? You'll just have to watch the movie to find out. So let's discuss what I think works with this movie. So I have to say, you don't really need to see the original Megalodon film to kind of watch this one. You kind of get a few lines of dialogue that will, you know, attach itself, but more or less everyone here is kind of like a different character, so you don't need to have seen the first one. I have to also say this movie is produced by The Asylum. If you're not familiar with The Asylum, they are a very low budget production company that spits out mainly kind of mockbusters, tending to be very kind of cheaply made, a quick turnaround to normally cash in on larger properties. Now what can I say that works for this movie's favour first of all? Having watched the first film, I did feel this film has a slightly more polished edge to it. Not by a huge margin, but certainly a small margin. I just thought the movie just seemed a little bit more kind of well-rounded. I think the effects just seemed slightly better here and there. I think the pacing was ever so better. The location shooting, which to be fair was in the first one as well, looks to be on a kind of legitimate kind of vessel. So again, it kind of adds a little bit of kind of realism. And some of the kind of the interactions from some of the cast here, I think, were okay and did a kind of a reasonable job of acting. And of course, you're kind of upping the stakes, having kind of 3 megalodons rather than just kind of the one. And even our named actor here, this one being Tom Sizemore, I think fared a little bit better than Michael Madsen from the first movie, who really looked like he just got out of bed and was meant to be a naval officer. So that was just kind of cheesy. But what doesn't work? The movie is a practical carbon copy of the first film. The first film was, oh my god, the Russians are kind of invading American waters, and yet there just happens to be a megalodon in the area. And in this one, it's the Chinese that are invading American waters, and there just happens to be a megalodon, or this time 3 megalodons. So it's practically the same film, and obviously the majority of the movie, and I've said this a number of reviews, The Asylum, they love a conversation in a room, and that is like 90% of the running time here. Talking in rooms. That is the modus operandi of Asylum movies. Let's pad out that running time. We'll have a sort of science fiction concept. We'll have cool cover art, but the vast majority of the times will be cheaply shot people talking about kind of incidental stuff in rooms, and that's kind of what we have here. Now, some of the acting I didn't think was too bad, but there are some actors here that I think do struggle. The dialogue is probably as cheesy and as trite as you kind of expect in these things. And you know, as is again with all these movies, they tend to trot out these kind of like these human level plots to actually distract from the fact that they don't want to spend a lot of money on kind of CGI on, in this case, obviously the kind of the megalodons. So we have these kind of convoluted cockamamie stories where the vast majority of the time is spent dealing with, you know, a human kind of threat rather than the actual kind of monster threat we're all kind of like actually kind of wanting to see. But what about those kind of megalodons? As I've said, I have to say I do think the CGI is marginally better than the kind of the first movie, but it is still kind of relatively basic. We see the kind of the megalodons underwater. There's no real kind of texture or anything like that. There appears to be no other kind of marine life or, you know, or seaweed or anything kind of in this sea. It's just kind of plain, textureless kind of like CGI. And it does go into silly territories where we have megalodons attacking San Diego beach. I'm thinking that there's no, I mean, a great white would struggle to get that far in to kind of, I know it would happen potentially, as in Jaws, but even so, you know, a megalodon is nowhere going to get nowhere near the beach in those kind of shallow waters. So it's just kind of ridiculous that they even attempt to do that. And there's also a lot of kind of this discussion about how these megalodons have caused damage, but it's all off screen and we don't see it. So I do get this feeling, although this movie does have a slightly kind of better sheen to it, a little bit of a better production, a lot of the kind of the what we want to see actually happens off screen, and we just get kind of told about it, which is a little kind of a little disappointing. We do see a little bit of it. There was a little bit of kind of like action on screen, but it's the kind of these. The thing with the asylum films, it's just the kind of the barest minimum. I wonder how long they can kind of keep this up, really, when people will kind of just think enough's enough. The films just seem practically the carbon copy of each other, and the fun of the Sharknado kind of hysteria that gripped kind of the world for a short time, I think is waning, and people are kind of getting tired of carbon copy, cookie cutter, low budget, junk food movies that are coming out and not really doing anything kind of original. And so this one does have a few moments where I do think it kind of is at least a little bit entertaining. I like the fact that it was actually filmed on a location, or it appears to be on an actual ship, and there does appear to be a little bit more kind of realism in regards to the kind of the military in this movie than the kind of the previous one. And there's lots of kind of like stock footage of helicopters and kind of military vessels that are used to kind of again to make it look like it's a kind of a bigger scale. Sadly lacking in the actual megalodon department, unfortunately. At least this one tries to have a little bit of a positive message about teamwork in regards to the kind of the Chinese and the Americans kind of maybe putting the differences aside. But ultimately, the most disappointing thing here is the story is practically a carbon copy. I suppose how different can a story be about a low budget megalodon movie? But it ultimately becomes like it's near enough exactly the same as the first movie. I do think it's slightly better made, but it's disappointing that it's just really more or less the same film. So I'm going to give it the same marks I gave the original, which is a 4 out of 10. It's still watchable to a degree, but it's by no means a kind of a must-see if you're a shark fan. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.